Hello and welcome to the Summit Demo Showcase. My name is Matt Bichelle. I am head of product marketing here at Aerospike. In the session, I am joined by the directors of product management, Adam Hebner, who oversees observability and management, Ronan Botzer, who oversees database and clients, Eric Schreiner, director of product management for cloud, Taylor, who oversees streaming and Kubernetes, and Ishan Biswas, who you heard from earlier today, who oversees graph and query. And the reason that we'd like to do this is earlier today's session, we heard Leslie Henzerling, our chief product officer, talk about all the great advancements that Aerospike has done over the past year since last summit. And what we'd like to do is visit with each of the product managers directly and have them demonstrate what they've been working on the past year, and at least in Ishan's case, what he's just completed. So with that, I'd like to invite Adam up on stage with me. Adam.
Thanks, Matt. My name's Adam. Excited and grateful to be here at my first Aerospike Summit. Excited to walk you through a bit about Aerospike observability. You'll see in the demo, we know that these are complex systems, and we're really moving beyond monitoring a single database to observing your real-time complexity. You'll see how we're managing that complexity in the demo. So let's go to the demo. In this demo, I'll be covering observability of your real-time data platform. We'll go over the instrumentation of the Aerospike database, an overview of our dashboards and alerts, and a real-life troubleshooting example. Before we get started with the demo, let's talk about how we instrument our database. Aerospike was built on good instrumentation. We have nearly 500 metrics that are included by default in the Aerospike database. All of these are documented in our metric reference, are searchable, and provide details about how to use the metric, what to alert on, and when it was introduced. This is incredibly helpful and is used to build dashboards and alerts regardless of your monitoring platform. We have these metrics in open metrics format, and it's easy to integrate with third-party vendors, or you can use our dashboards as a starter pack to get you going in Grafana. We'll take a look at our new overview dashboard, which gives you a summary of what's happening across your Aerospike clusters. As I mentioned, it's about observability of your entire real-time data platform. So in my example here, I have two clusters that I'm monitoring, one a North American data center and one a European data center. This overview is showing me that I have a workload running in my North American data center that is being sent via XDR to my European data center. Currently, the system is up and running and healthy, but I'm going to trigger something off screen to see if we can highlight some of the alerting mechanisms we have in place. All right, now you see that an alert has triggered in our primary data center. You'll see that that data center has turned red. We can see that two alerts have been fired here. It does appear that those are happening a particular node and also in a particular namespace, and they don't appear to affect my backup data center at all. I'm going to drill into one of the nodes to see if there's any particular issues that we see on this node. We can see that the alert is firing here, but other than that, we have a best practice check that maybe is out of line, but not seeing anything really that alarming. It seems like, there's loads spread out the system. We have plenty of memory available, but for some reason, this particular node is having a problem. Let's continue our troubleshooting by investigating this particular namespace we're seeing an issue in. The namespace is a logical grouping of data that has a defined set of quotas that you can configure, and right away, jumping out at me, I can see that exceeding the quota on a particular set here. So I'm going to go ahead and click through to that set. And sure enough, it does appear that the set in question has exceeded its quota, but you can see that particular configuration is not shared across the entire set of nodes. So something was made in error. Let's go ahead and jump over to the terminal to see what we can look at there. I'm going to start by logging into ASADM admin tool. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to showcase a new command that we have from the command line, which will give us more details about the problems we were seeing with the quota on the dashboard. You'll see at the bottom of my show stop rights command here that we have gone into stop rights, the namespace test and the set test set. This is where our configuration problem has occurred, and we'll go ahead now and walk through remediation of this issue using ASADM portal. First, I need to enable the ability to manage config. So manage config namespace, our namespace name, set, our set name, param, and the configuration here is stop rights size. That's the first column shown in the show stop rights command. And we want to set that to, let's just go really big. This is in bytes and is a new configuration setting in the Aerospike server 6.3. All right. We've configured that stop right size. This is a helpful feature for setting limits on a particular set, which is similar to a table, which in the case of a noisy neighbor can prevent aggressive workloads from spilling over to the rest of your cluster. In this case, I was using it as an example to set an issue on a particular node. Let's hop back over to the dashboards and refresh, see what's going on here. And sure enough, now that that configuration has taken place, we have a 2 gigabyte limit across all of our nodes. ASADM will sync your configuration across the nodes, and we are back to green on an overview. All of our dashboards are fully supported and available on the Aerospike downloads page under our monitoring tab. We encourage you to get set up and contact support if you have any questions.
Adam, that was pretty awesome. Now, there's some updates that I believe you have either in place or about to roll out. So do you want to take us through some of those? I think we see some up on the screen here.
Yeah, the demo I just walked through is available today. So we have our new overview dashboard really designed for multi-cluster monitoring, giving you that drill down ability I showcased in the demo. Additionally, we have some reference architectures for open telemetry. If you are looking to integrate with a third party like Datadog, Elastic, CloudWatch, New Relic, all of those are provided as examples and pretty easy to get set up.
Well, look, I think we'll invite you back up on stage at the end with all the product management leaders. For now, just sit tight and
Right.
Thanks. So really, if people were observant, they might have noticed that what Adam was showing was our core database functionality and features. And since last year when we launched Aerospike 6, we have a number of point releases, and we have a couple that we were shown in our roadmap session from Lendley earlier in the day. We've asked Ronan to take us through some very granular updates in the core database. And so with that, I'll let Ronan take it from here.
Hi, I'm Ronan Bosser, Director of Product at Aerospike for the Aerospike database and the clients. And I wanted to review what we've done since Summit 2022. We did a rewrite of secondary indexes, which started in 5.6 with set indexes. Those are the indexes that allow you to find a small set within a large namespace. We reduced the memory footprint of secondary indexes by 60% in Server 5.7. In 6.0, we added the ability to query by partition to let you do massive horizontal scale approach to large queries. Query pagination and tolerance of runtime cluster rebalancing was added in 6.0, and we let developers explicitly designate short queries for higher concurrency. Secondary indexes in Enterprise Edition 6.1 moved into shared memory, which meant that namespaces with secondary indexes can be warm started. Support for storing secondary indexes in Optane PMEM was added in Server 6.3. 6.4 will add the ability to store secondary indexes on flash. We allowed to index deeply nested elements in a map and list data type in Server 6.1, and there were a lot of performance improvements for queries. The long-running queries in 6.0, geospatial queries in 6.3, short query scans, set index queries in 6.4. And we will soon allow you to index any data type, not just numeric and string data. Developer API enhancements included the Query API. We have a unified Query API for both the primary index and secondary index queries. Pagination and rate limiting is all in one place and was added in Server 6.0. We gave you the ability to batch anything in Server 6.0, meaning not just read, but also write and updates and deletes. We removed the batch size limits in Server 6.4 that is coming soon. Expressions for matching a map against record data, whether it's in a bin or nested inside a map or a list, was added in 6.3. Getting map operation results as a submap was added in Server 6.3, 2 new return types. Default TTLs at the set level is going to be added in Server 6.7.0. And multi-record transactions are the big thing coming with Server 7.1 that we're doing a lot of preliminary work for in 6.4 and 7.0. There is a tighter integration of Spring Data with a lot more frequent releases. And we're working on new clients. There's a LinkPad driver out there on the Launchpad, and there's a new C# client in the works. We have async Python client, PHP client, and Node.js clients in the works, and a new Rust client releases coming soon. So there's a lot of other cool things that came since 6.0. We boosted XDR throughput in Server 6.1 for recovery and rewind, but for all normal XDR operations in Server 6.4. We can run on AWS Graviton 2 and other ARM processors starting from Server 6.2. Faster truncates by leveraging set indexes was added in Server 6.3. Multi-tenancy, the ability to put storage quotas on sets, was added in 6.3, and we're going to remove unique bin name limit per namespace in Server 7.0. AWS Secrets Manager is coming, integration is coming with 6.4, Azure Key Vault, and GCP Secrets Manager right after. For Server 7.0, we're unifying the storage format for the storage engine memory with what we have on disk and PMIM. This will mean that you could do compression and warm restarts of your in-memory namespaces because they will be with the same format and live in shared memory. We're going to get significantly better garbage collection for data in memory. Faster defragmentation of the optional persistence layer without using any disk reads, faster tomb rating and durable delete tombstones, again without using any disk reads, and much simpler capacity planning because the in-memory and the persistence layer mirror each other now. LRU eviction policies will be added to complement our TTL-based eviction policy that we have now. And we're going to add device async IO with IO ring into likely Server 7.1. And that's it.
Awesome. We'll invite Ronan at the end for more Q&A, but you can really get a good sense for how much the update to the core database is really touching all of the business from XDR to our connectors like Elasticsearch, as well as how we query the business. So really, thank you again, Ronan, for taking us through quite a bit of information in a very short amount of time. So up next, I'd like to invite to the stage Eric Schreier to give us a little bit on update for cloud.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate everyone joining today and listening to all the exciting things that are happening and are soon to be happening on Aerospike. So I just have a short update today on what is actually quite a bit of activity going on under Aerospike Cloud. So as many of you know, the Aerospike Cloud managed service has been available for over 3 years. I have some amazing customers using that product, running significant workloads with exceeding 1 million transactions per second. We have customers that are running in extremely secure environments. And that's really the hallmark of that product offering is it's running Aerospike workloads in customer cloud accounts. We, beginning of this year, completed our multi-cloud journey and are offering the service across all 3 major public clouds. And really the next step in the evolution of Aerospike Cloud is now offering a service that runs in our own accounts, a true database as a service, which you have probably heard about and that we have been working on to deliver. So taking all of the experience we have of running Aerospike in the cloud on behalf of our customers over the last 3 years, we're expanding our cloud platform with the new version of our control plane. Part of the focus here, especially on DBaaS, is making sure that the experience for developers, especially those creating new applications, allows them to get started quickly and has a seamless journey to get that database spun up and get their applications connected. So we've done a lot of work there, including developing a layer 7 proxy, which will facilitate connections over layer 7 to the Aerospike database, and a lot of good work coming out of there as we're working through our internal beta to make that available. And then part of what you're going to see expanding here is the ability to not only use this interface to spin up new databases, but also do that via API. And we have a lot of customers that are looking for that ability, both from a development perspective, but also within their own SaaS applications and for management of their customers, where they are provisioning customers and want to provide an Aerospike database for those applications to provide the best performance. So we'll have APIs that are designed to integrate into customers' applications, part of the solution going forward. The control plane is also going to have, significant observability capabilities that are going to allow customers to monitor the performance of their databases, receive alerts when they should be looking at increasing their capacity, and leveraging a lot of the great capabilities that Adam was talking about earlier from an observability and management standpoint. We also have enterprise security integrations coming. Ronan mentioned that we have the cloud native secrets management integrations coming in the core database, which we'll be leveraging here. So the customers can manage their own encryption keys through those services. And then really the main focus in this effort is our autonomous data plane. So looking at all the components that we have running to drive the Aerospike database and observability and all the features there, increasing automation around that so we can quickly deploy large fleets of databases for customers and allow them to manage those, but then also ongoing upgrades, security vulnerability assessments, updates and remediation for any issues that arise. Aerospike database is great at handling nodes that fall out of service and rebalancing the cluster. But what we see oftentimes in the cloud is that nodes don't fully fall out of use. They'll move into a degraded state. And so this service is designed to handle a lot of those degradations within the cloud so that we can be responsive to those states and ensure the clusters continue running at optimal state and delivering the performance that our customers have come to expect from Aerospike. I mentioned, the multi-tenant capabilities of the database and exposing that through here as well. This is, again, supporting those customers that are looking to build Aerospike Cloud into their SaaS applications. As we continue to roll out more of those enterprise capabilities and look to enhance those integrations, this should be a significant capability, leveraging, again, a number of features around sets and capabilities that the other product managers have talked about today. So a lot of great work, that's happening here. We're excited about features that we're going to be bringing to the market and making available across the various cloud providers and making it simpler for customers to get up and running with Aerospike and ultimately build that into their applications and provide top tier experiences for their customers. Matt, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. That was, one might not have predicted, so much content on the screen that you could really give that much color, given that there is really a breathtaking amount of development for database as a service, cloud, and ACMS. And so I definitely will follow up with you at the end when we invite everyone on for some Q&A. So for now, we'll keep it going, but thank you. All right. Next, I'd like to have Taylor Graham give us a short demo on Connect for Elasticsearch. Now, the Connect for Elasticsearch connector was launched earlier this year at Aerospike. And given there are so many good use cases that Aerospike really wanted to invest in really best of breed search capabilities. So we made the strategic decision again to not formulate our own search capabilities, but again, to partner and integrate with Elasticsearch. What I thought would be helpful would be to have Taylor kind of give us a quick walkthrough of how it works and really how straightforward it is, and really how efficient the connector is in moving data in and out. So with that, I'll invite Taylor to provide his demo.
We're going to walk through a basic setup of the Elasticsearch connector and how it works. Here we have the Aerospike database. The data flows through XDR out to the connector, and then out from the connector and into Elasticsearch. This is a very basic visual, kind of see what's going on. As we walk through exactly what's going on, you can see here is a full record in our Node.js application. We will send that record over to Elasticsearch. Now, here is the full record inside of Elasticsearch. Now, this is not primarily what it's used for. This is just to kind of show you what it looks like. Generally, what we find is people who have Aerospike and Elasticsearch together would like a subset of the data to be inside of Elastic to help power the search. Now, how we do that is through our Aerospike Elasticsearch connector, right? So with that connector, we have it configured now where we're only going to send a subset of that record, that bin, the bin comment mentions, over to Elasticsearch. Here, I've already sent this record in. Now we're going to send it in again. All right, it went over. We'll do a quick little refresh. All right, here's the record is in Elasticsearch. And now you can see it looks slightly different in that only a subset of the record came over. Only the comment mentions. And here's the demo. Here's the intro to Stoicism, right? And so what happens is if this hits, if something in the search comes back and they're like, hey, I want intro to Stoicism, it will return the digest. And the digest is how the application will get to the record in Aerospike. What that looks like in a very basic form. So we hit an Elasticsearch on intro to Stoicism in this document inside of Elasticsearch. It then returns the digest right here. This node application uses the digest to request the data. This is kind of like the enrichment. So we only had intro to Stoicism. Now we use the digest, we request the data, and now we have the full record. We can also link to other records off that one call. So this happens really fast. It allows you to kind of see how you can enrich data that's already inside of Elasticsearch. Thanks for your time.
All right. Well, thank you, Taylor. So I definitely would, again, want you back on stage at the very end. A little bit of follow-up on that, because you did cover a deceptive amount of information, even though it was a fairly straightforward demo, which I think is part of the beauty of how the connector works itself. So with that, our next session, demo-wise, is on Graph. Aerospike Graph was launched on June 20th globally. Ishan had earlier in the day conducted a roundtable with 2 Graph experts. And really, the only missing piece is really for a demo. So Ishan, I really invite you to take us through the product itself. So Ishan.
Hi, I'm Ishan Biswas, Director of Product Management at Aerospike, and I'm excited to introduce you to Aerospike Graph. In this session, we'll cover some essentials of Aerospike Graph. We'll start with a quick overview of the architecture and the installation process. We'll then go through an example of how to use Aerospike Graph in a real-world scenario. Let's dive in. Aerospike Graph is a scalable, high-performance graph database built on Aerospike's proven database technology. This is the storage layer for Aerospike Graph. The compute layer is what we call Aerospike Graph Service. These are stateless compute instances that you can seamlessly scale out to meet your application throughput needs. On the extreme left of the picture is your application. You can integrate Gremlin queries in your application code and connect to the Aerospike Graph Service instances to execute those queries. Let's move over and learn how to install Aerospike Graph. The first step to the installation is installing the Aerospike database cluster. In this setup, I have a 3-node Aerospike cluster deployed using Docker. Next, I will deploy the Aerospike Graph Service. All you need to do is point it to the database cluster and pass in some parameters. The Graph Service sets up the Gremlin server, connects to the database cluster, and kicks off index creation and some other startup processes. Once the server is up, which usually takes a few seconds, you can connect to it from your application and execute your Gremlin queries. It really is that simple. Now let's take a typical advertising type use case, which uses an identity graph for personalized ads. For this demo, we've generated a synthetic dataset built on a schema. The schema has several identifiers such as device IDs, IP addresses, and cookies. These identifiers, modeled here as vertices, represent different mobile and web signals. These are associated to a unique individual, called here as the golden entity, through the associated with edge type. The golden entity is also linked to multiple data source ID vertices. These represent data points from third-party data providers. The data source ID vertex has multiple vertex properties to model the data about the entity. Additionally, the golden entity is also associated with a household vertex. This represents a shared household between multiple different individuals. In personalized advertising, this integration of disparate data sources is crucial. The more data you can use for decisioning dictates how effective your ad offering is. For this demo, we're using a graph visualization tool called G.V. You can see a small sample of the dataset that's already been loaded onto Aerospike. Let's zoom in to see one of the golden entity vertices and its neighborhood. Now, let's explore some interesting queries you can run on this dataset. We'll first do a simple lookup based on a device ID. So we'll do a G.V has device ID and a device ID number. We found the ID, now let's zoom into it. If we add the in.path to the query, we can also see the path that connects it to the golden entity. We'll now retrieve the audience seg fields from the data sources this golden entity is connected to. You can see that the device vertex we started from then traversed over the associated with edge to the golden entity, and then we found all the data source ID vertices that's connected to. So now how do I use this information in my application? Let's modify the query to grab the audience seg property from all the different data source IDs and duplicate the results. I now have a result set back as a list which I could use in my application. Now let's look at another query where we'll be adding a new data source ID vertex and connect it to a unique golden entity. Let's first add this vertex to the database. As you can see, we've added the vertex with several properties, including a phone number. The database has created an ID for us. Now let's find a golden entity based on the phone number property in the data source ID vertex types. To do that, we'll first find the data source IDs that have the phone number and then find the golden entity that it's connected to. Now that we've found it, all we need to do is create an edge between the vertex we just created to the golden entity. We do that by extending the query with the add e extension and provide the newly created vertex ID. Now, if I go to the vertex golden entity again and traverse over the has entity edge type, I should be able to see the newly created element. There you go. We've now successfully added a new data source for this golden entity. These examples showcase how easy it is for developers to get started with Aerospike Graph. Modeling your data as a graph and then writing application logic as gremlin queries empowers you to effortlessly translate your ideas into actionable code. With Aerospike Graph, you can be rest assured that you will get extreme query throughput and real-time query performance no matter how large your dataset is. Whether it's part of a big data pipeline or you're just getting started with a small dataset, we've got you covered with bulk load utilities that fit every size. Thank you for joining us for this demo. To learn more and explore further, try Aerospike Graph today. Stay connected and happy graphing.
All right. Thanks, Ishan. So I will comment that there is a trial for Aerospike Graph on the Aerospike website. So we encourage folks to go ahead and sign up and download that. So at this point, I'll invite all of the presenters to come up off stage. And what we'll do is we'll kind of go and conduct a little bit of a random Q&A. So this is a little bit fun for me, given the breadth of the portfolio that we've just covered. And obviously, we're all connected here via Aerospike. But what I'll do is I'll start with Adam, since there's one question in the chat. I'll kind of bring it out to the fore here. And it's about, so the question is there a tool to help with avoiding misconfiguring a node? So I'll let you kind of comment about that.
Yeah, so we do have a new tool for config validation called asconfig. I'll post the link to it here in the chats. It will be coming in our next release, the ability to compare two config files. So this will highlight a discrepancy like I had shown on a particular node, and also shares the same schema validation that we do with our Kubernetes operator. So if you're already using YAML to manage your Aerospike conf, asconfig will be familiar to you and available to you without Kubernetes. Kind of bringing some of those learnings to our tools package and giving you some new capabilities for these types of misconfiguration.
Yeah, as a little bit of a follow-up, are there any particular metrics? I mean, you kind of showed in your one slide 400 plus metrics. Are there any in particular that jump out at you that kind of can help with this, I'll say, control aspect?
Yeah, probably best to look at not only our Grafana dashboards, but our Grafana alerts that are packaged with them, or I should say Prometheus alerts. You'll see them in Grafana. Those are what we refer to in our metrics reference as key metrics to monitor. They call out specific scenarios where that dashboard I was showcasing will turn red. So they're a built-in explanation of some of the use cases that can cause problems. And then, of course, a lot of our other metrics are somewhat use case dependent. We have a set of metrics if you're using XDR. We have a set of metrics for secondary indexes. Those things are easy to find in the metric reference, but those alerts represent the metrics we think everyone should care about regardless of their use case.
Yeah, so let's talk about secondary indexes a little bit, because Ronan had touched on some of the advancements during the year. And so I'll kind of position this to both you and Ronan is, if someone is deploying or using a lot of secondary indices, what metrics should people have in mind to help with either monitoring the performance or control? So I'll start first with Ronan.
We have metrics that show you the memory usage, and that's typically the most important thing, and they're labeled, whether they're secondary index or persistent memory, or in the future, secondary index on flash. The main thing in most systems is to make sure you're not running out of memory. And I believe that the dashboard now has both an alert from the alert manager, but also visually shows you when you're starting to near a very high usage of that.
Yeah, I echo that. You'll see that node level, if you're running out of memory overall, then, we have details about how many secondary indexes you have set up. So you should be able to piece that together using the dashboard. It's pretty straightforward.
One of the things that you had mentioned, Adam, was, you're able to kind of monitor your entire, not just database, but kind of the data platform. And so looking at Taylor, he did a little demo on Connect for Elasticsearch. How much our integrations or the data flow would our updated O&M stack really cover?
All of our connectors do have a set of metrics associated with them as well. So when you're monitoring to a connector, you can get information about not only the XDR throughput from that cluster, but confirming what's making it into Elastic. Those are organized slightly different. So you have to find the metric details in the connector guide. And we're still working to get some dashboards out for that. But we also have those instrumented, documented, and are really integrating into the kind of the package that we include in our observability stack.
Yeah, Taylor, are there any other kind of metrics that jump out at you that people should be, monitoring?
No, I mean, Adam pretty nailed it. The one thing I would add is that all of this does work across Kubernetes as well, right? So it's this virtual machine and Kubernetes-based monitoring that we've been talking about.
Okay, so no matter where you're deployed. And so looking up at Eric, at least on my screen, how much of this O&M stack is leveraged by the cloud system and platform at Aerospike?
One of the great things about being the cloud team at Aerospike is we get to leverage all the great products that everybody else is building, including our O&M stack. So our site reliability engineers, have all of the alerts have been defined as part of our Prometheus. They're leveraging those Grafana dashboards. And then on top of that, they built, their own based on their own experience. And so that provides a nice feedback loop to the core product team there with Adam and Ronan. So it's a tool that we rely on a daily basis to run the service, and one that we're excited to see continue to develop.
So Ishana, you gave a demo on Aerospike Graph. I think it's pretty safe to say that that's more for offline analytics or analysis to really demonstrate the capabilities of the product versus online transactions, which is what the system was designed for. Is that an accurate statement?
It's kind of the queries that I showed. I showed it in a visual way. That's good to get started with the graph database when you're trying to figure out what queries you're going to run. So there's some iterative cycles there. And also when you're iterating on a data model. But the queries really, once they're solid, that can go in your application for operational use. The promise there is, we've been able to achieve is that you can run these queries at like a 2, 3, 4 hop query within a few milliseconds, within 5 to 10 milliseconds at any scale really. So whether you have a 100 gigabyte data set, which is like maybe a few hundreds of thousands of graph elements with vertices, edges, and properties, or it's like 50 terabytes or 100 terabytes, the performance levels remain the same in terms of latency and both throughputs. It's because of the underlying database and the performance characteristics of that, we're able to get that level. We're able to handle large amounts of data volume, even for graph.
So you speak very confidently about that. Could you describe, what gives you that confidence? What kind of work went in to determine these performance metrics?
We just concluded our benchmarking, and we're going to publish this externally within the next few weeks. This benchmarking is based on data sets and schemas that we've learned from our customers and that customers have provided us. So we have generalized them for identity graph use cases and created our own tools so you can synthetically create a data set. And we've generated a data set that's like 20 terabytes on Aerospike. It has 16 Aerospike graph service nodes connected to it. I won't give spoilers right now, but you can get pretty impressive performance numbers from that. So that's a number, and I can speak confidentially of it, but we'll publish those numbers.
I feel a blog coming on. Okay. You just told us a little about speed for your part of the portfolio. Maybe, Taylor, you could describe a little bit for us about Elasticsearch. Tell us a little bit about how quickly a record can get inserted, updated, deleted, and why is that so impressive at Aerospike?
When you think about like Elasticsearch and you think about the application, everything, once that search hits the right object, everything needs to happen almost in real time to get that data to the application so they can understand exactly what they're looking at. I did that app in Node.js, and that was 1 millisecond latency. You blink and then you go from Elasticsearch all the way into Aerospike and the data is populated. So it's about as fast as you can get, I would say.
Yeah, speed, and scale, we've definitely been touching on. Ask this of Ronan to kind of explain maybe some of the underpinnings, technically, why we're able to do this Elasticsearch. I mean, there are other parts of the portfolio that have been updated in the core database, the advancements in secondary index, but also our changed data capture technology, which also is part of the connector ecosystem.
I had to make the very nerdy correction that a blink is 100 milliseconds, so it's 100 times faster than a blink. But, now that went there, this technology is based on XDR, right? XDR originally was designed to keep multiple Aerospike clusters in sync, ones that are like very far apart from each other. So it's asynchronous, but it can handle very, very high throughput. So if you have, millions of operations per second, you can chain multiple data centers together and have a globally distributed application that gets to see within what you can do in speed of light through fiber, plus a few limitations on switches and hops on the way, but as fast as basically we can. We're trying to remove us as a barrier to this data updating, right? So of course, it depends how far apart the data centers are, but typically you will deploy them where they're close to each other. Elasticsearch is extremely advanced, and a lot of people use it for full text searches. Aerospike is a great data store that has, very low latency and does all of this at probably the best cost performance of any database out there, right? So if you have very, very large data sets, you probably don't want to cram all that data into Elasticsearch because there it all lives in memory, very complex indexing that is being done. It is not cost efficient to try to do this just for the search part. So we have seen that our customers have done this long before the connector. They've just used other mechanisms, like say used Kafka in between to insert into the two systems. But they were always trying to drive to keep those things in sync as much as possible. So for us to remove a layer like Kafka out of this basically reduces the latency difference between our system, when it updates in the record in Aerospike and when it updates in Elasticsearch. The connector is extremely efficient, and we've done, as I mentioned, multiple updates to the performance of XDR over time. So 6.4, for example, coming right around bend in a few weeks, has yet another improvement to the latency of XDR. And the more updates we can do per second, the faster, even when you have very large data scales and a lot of throughput, we can update the attached record, which is really in a one-to-one association. So if you do a delete, it just disappears on the Elasticsearch side and it keeps that data fresh. You're able to use Elasticsearch for what it's best at, which is finding the objects you want based on some criteria. And then you can keep the majority of the data in Aerospike where it scales really well and has very low latency, and the cost of doing this is not, kind of going to take down your business. That's really tied.
That's a good explanation. Last 2.5 minutes, I'll see if I can work in at least one more question. And Ishan, with a new product with Graph, I've noticed a lot of individuals asking about the scalability. Could you just comment briefly about that, given what makes Aerospike Graph, what gives it its capabilities for scale?
There are two aspects to scalability for Graph. One is, like I mentioned before, the data volume. We get that from the database. The other is, like I described earlier, with the Graph service. That's where the compute happens for calculating the queries, the Graph queries. That is tied to your application throughput. And the way the system is designed, these are independently scalable. If your application needs X amount of throughput, you use Y amount of graph service nodes. If you need twice the throughput, you will double the number of graph service nodes. And so that works pretty proportionally. So this way, we've been able to scale compute, which is essentially throughput, and storing data and getting the low levels of latency with the database, and being able to independently scale those based on what your application needs.
All right. Well, perfect. This concludes our demo showcase. I'd like to thank each of my counterparts that shared their demonstrations with us. And we look forward to seeing you at aerospike.com. So again, thank you, everyone.